Good morning and welcome to Sunday Special. Dr. Lamba explains Sikhism segment of the Awakening Code. Zafarnama, as the name itself shows, is a Persian word and it literally means a letter of victory. But here it was not only a letter of victory, it was a spiritual victory. A defeated leader, in the normal sense of term, was morally more successful, ethically a victor, and he sent a letter to the so-called victor, the Mughal Emperor of India, Aurangzeb. It was written in 1705. Battle of Chamkaur was over. And this letter is groundbreaking. The famous Persian poets who wrote Shahnameh said that they'll prefer to exchange this one letter with thousands of verses that they have written, full of force, full of indignity at the cowardice, and in fact an apostasy of Islam is a central theme of Zafarnama. And not only that, its effect was lost, so much so that the recipient of the letter, Zafarnama, was filled with remorse and was basically a reason for his breakdown and eventual death. He felt that after reading the letter that he had committed an act of heresy. He had betrayed Islam, and his conscience finally won over the battle, and he ordered that all the action against the Sikhs be stopped. Now what happened was actually, it was the month of December 1704. Chamkaur, a district in Punjab, saw a battle between Gobind Singh and a combined Mughal Rajput army. The details of the conflict differed from one source to another, but one thing is clear, that on one side the army was more than 10,000 against just 46. And yet the fight went on longer than the collision thought. It would be between 21st December to 23rd December. So negotiations began and an agreement was reached between two sides to allow Guru and his family a safe passage. However, on another December night, Guru Gobind Singh stepped out of the Anandpur Sahib fort. He was attacked by the Mughal forces. He managed to reach Dina, but in the process lost his two sons, who were killed in fight. By the time the Battle of Chamkaur ended, he had lost everything because in the meantime his two sons had been buried alive in the wall, rather walled alive, and his mother had died, his father, so the whole family was wiped out. But was he disheartened? No. So what are the contents of this ethical epistle, as I call it? This ethical epistle reminds Aurangzeb how he and his soldiers had broken their oath sworn on the Holy Quran when they promised safe passage to Gobind Singh, but launched a hidden attack of 10,000 men and 40 famished Sikh soldiers. He tells Aurangzeb that this was not a battle, it was a slaughter. As such, in spite of losing most of his Sikhs in this attack, he had won a moral victory. And victory was over the Mughal emperor, who was the strongest king possible in the whole world at that time. And the king who was an avowed Muslim. So according to Gobind Singh, he had broken his vows to Allah. He also states that despite sending a huge army, the Mughal forces did not succeed in the mission because they could not either capture or kill Guru Gobind Singh. The whole epic, I call it an epic, is a poem. Only 111 verses, that's all. But here he rebukes Aurangzeb for his weakness as a human being, his failure as a leader. And Guru Gobind Singh also confirms, affirms, and rededicates his confidence and unflinching faith in the Almighty God. And even after suffering extreme personal loss, father, mother, all the four sons, and hundreds of Sikhs, thousands of Sikhs, he was not disheartened. And he then invites Aurangzeb to meet him in Kangar village near Batinda, Punjab, and assures him that the Brar tribe would not harm him. He says, you can break an oath taken on Holy Quran. We do not do so. There will be no danger to your life. The verse says very clearly. Verse 59. On the way to Kangar, if you come, if you come, there will be no danger to your life, for the whole tribe of Brahs accepts my command. Now, out of these 111 verses, the maximum number of verses 34, and they are in praise of God. Nothing to do with the war, nothing to do with Aurangzeb, nothing to do with the Pahari Hindu kings who had combined hands with Aurangzeb. And 32 verses deal with Aurangzeb's invitation for the Guru to meet him and the Guru's refusal to meet the emperor, instead asking Aurangzeb to visit him. 24 verses detail the events in the Battle of Chamkaur, which took place on 22nd of December, and 15 verses rebuke, condemn, criticize Aurangzeb for it being a promise maker. And in verses 78 and 79, two verses, Guru Gobind Singh warns Aurangzeb about the resolve of Khalsa until and unless the Mughal empire is destroyed. But then look at the beauty. This shows even the greatness of Gobind Singh, that he was impartial. He was not going to condemn everything. He knew his enemy was wrong, but he also gives praise where it's due. So, 6 verses praise Aurangzeb. And can you believe it? On the one side you are calling a person an apostate, a coward, a moral leaper, basically. And then he praises Aurangzeb. Guru Gobind Singh thanked God for everything, and he mentions in Zafarnama that he won because he did not indulge in an act of betrayal or cheating. He and his army fought courageously and they spent their lives for the good of the people. They fought a war against the evil with purity, with no bad intentions, and he cannot be defeated even if he is seen to be defeated, because God is by his side. The most quoted verse of Zafarnama is verse 22. Chukar kar amze hil te gurdas, halalas burdan vacham shir dust. When all efforts have failed and justice is not in sight, it is proper to pick up arms. Now, this justification of fighting, that one should not fight, but when all efforts fail, then the ultimate way is to fight. Now, Aurangzeb's oath taken on Quran has no credibility. And Guru asks him, what manliness have you shown by extinguishing a few sparks? You have only made the fight brighter and more furious. But then he says that Aurangzeb is a very capable administrator and a king. He was able to separate the emperor as a administrator from man who is an oppressor. He called him king of kings. He called him a great swordsman, agile writer. And the whole poem, as I said, 111 verses, 3 parts. Now when Guruji sent this letter to Aurangzeb, he told him that he will not meet him, and he had received the invitation and he rejected the invitation but asked him to come to him. And he told him that he is not against Islam. He did not harbor any ill will against Muslims. He saw all with the same eye. A good many Muslims had basically sided with Guru Gobind Singh against Aurangzeb. And now when Aurangzeb invited Guru Gobind Singh with due humility and promised to do justice who indulged in barbarous act, Gobind Singh said, yes, I will not come to you, but you can come to me. When Gobind Singh entered Rajasthan, the news was conveyed to him that the king, hit by remorse, broken down morally, had died. Historical records show that emperor, after reading this letter, lost all his appetite and power of digestion and could not expel any waste. Wherein he took, whatever he took acted as a poison in his body. He was in great pain. And he was terrified that he was being punished for his sins against Guru Gobind Singh. And he believed that the angels of death were about to visit him. And he knew that as guilty, having his grade expanded would be bad. These thoughts were laying heavily on the king. The point is, why do I call it ethical epistle? What's the significance of Zafarnama? As I said, it's basically the moral basis for the being of Khalsa. Why the Khalsa was created. It was not for personal greed. It was not for territorial expansion. It was to provide an ethical base. And Guru Gobind Singh went to Talwandi Sabo, which later on became Takhat Damdama Sahib. He was so filled with purposeful mission that he made his residence there. So, he had been victorious in the Battle of Khidrana. Khidrana is near Mughal. And looking back at the site, he had written this letter. Now as he praised the letter, he said, your generosity is profound, your wealth is great, you are a great carver of kingdoms, you are a great swordsman, you are a skillful ruler, all the good qualities. And you give donations both to the Hindus and the Islam. Your attributes of justice are well known, but you are a betrayer and a breaker of faith. And I basically have done this. So this shows that moral value is that it's not your personal greed which is important. What is important is your commitment, your word, your promise, and your fight for justice. Say you are having a sword fight, and the sword of the enemy or the opponent flies off. You don't kill him, you let him pick up the sword. And then fight continues. So this sort of ethics, which is also exemplified in the story of Bhai Kanhaiya, where he said, Bhai Kanhaiya, that you not only give water to the enemy, but also apply balm to their wounds. I always call that thing to be a precursor of Red Cross in action. And that's why I say the real founder of Red Cross was not Henry Duant, but it was Guru Gobind Singh. Now, the macabre sense of justice disregard of the religion of others. This is what we today celebrate, the human rights. And this letter celebrates the human rights, the moral values, the sense of diversity, and also the sense of alignment with justice. So, it is basically a plea for justice, and that moral value is basically the base of Zafarnama. It's the spiritual victory. Shah Hussain praised it, and I am amazed that a defeated person with his whole family lost did not have any regret about that loss. He did not have any feeling of remorse at his value. People normally would say, well, what is this justice? Had I not indulged in this, I could have been successful. No. This basically shows that your commitment to the values, your commitment to the ethics is much more important than the material success that you may have. Especially the material successes by breach of promise, by being morally bankrupt, howsoever rich, powerful you may be. As a matter of fact, the same thing had earlier been told by Guru Nanak when he told Malik Bhago that I will not eat your food because this is based on the blood sucked from the bread of the poor, but I'll eat the stale bread of the carpenter, Lalu, because that is earned by honest means. So the ethical values form the basis of all actions from the Guru Nanak to Gobind Singh. But Gobind Singh far exceeds any other leader for the simple reason of his commitment to three things. A, to the God. B, to the moral values. And C, to his authenticity. As a matter of fact, what Shakespeare says in one of his poems, the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say that he was a man, and man is with capital M. In Punjabi we call him Mard Agambara, the peerless, unparalleled, unique person. Was he a divine being? Maybe. Was he a human being? Yes, he was a real, authentic human being, without a flaw. And that is what motivated people to be drawn to him. He was a magnet. And not only a magnet, he transformed the lives of the people. Even today, for all the acts, the people who constitute Khalsa and Sikhs, you will hardly find any Sikh as a beggar, because they think that hard work, honest work, is the way of real success. So Zafarnama is to be celebrated as a great piece of literary work full of spiritual, ethical, moral values, and a guide to living, and also as a commitment to the human and the moral values. And that commitment sustained humanity right from the beginning and will continue to sustain. And Zafarnama would always stand out as a lighthouse in the turbulent ocean of greed, dishonesty, and immorality. Thank you.